Hello folks, I'm Alex, this is Alex Unabridged, and today I'm going to be chatting about two books by Angela Carter, The Magic Toyshop and Wise Children. So welcome back to the channel if that is the case. Yes, so it's time for March's wrap up of what I read for my month with project, where I'm exploring some work of authors that I've only read a tiny bit of before. And for March I spent the month with Angela Carter. I'd only read The Bloody Chamber, so that's her sort of collection of short horror stories. Dark fairy tales, if you like, and also Nights at the Circus, which is probably her most famous novel, and I love both of those. So it was time to see if some of Carter's other writing could live up to those two. So I started off with The Magic Toyshop, which was from 1967, so it's one of her earlier works. This was an audiobook and it was read by Fiona Shaw. And this tells the story of Melanie, who is a 15-year-old girl who's forced to move to London and live with her very kind of abusive and oppressive uncle and his strange family after her parents die whilst they're away in the US. She moves there with her younger siblings, her younger brother Jonathan, and her the little kid of the family, Victoria. Jonathan's about, I think, 10 or 11, maybe 12, and Victoria's like 5. And it's a coming of age story, basically. It's kind of Melanie dealing with the death of her family and the fact that the life that she thought she was going to have is kind of ripped away from her. And she's thrown into this very, very different situation, and she has to find her feet, find her place in this new family, negotiate the sort of quite strange dynamics of this new family, whilst also, you know, kind of going through adolescence and sexual awakening and all of that kind of stuff that comes with being, you know, a 15-year-old, 16-year-old girl. So yeah, this one wasn't quite what I expected it was going to be. After reading Nights at the Circus, particularly, but also the Bloody Chamber, I was expecting a lot more kind of overt magic realism, and this isn't that. Any magic realism in it is very subtle, and I almost struggle to see how the magic realism kind of comes into this. I guess the strangeness of this family set up in London and the toy shop. The toy shop, I wouldn't say it's magical. There's nothing, you know, tangibly magical in it. It's just there's a lot of kind of strangeness and kind of etherealness, eeriness to it. So yeah, it wasn't what I expected, I have to say. But it still had the hallmarks of Carter's, Carter's great writing. That was the strongest element of it for me, and the character work, the character kind of examinations. It was quite funny in the beginning sections, I have to say. That was some of the best bits for me. Where there's that humour, Carter's humour comes in, but then it did shift in tone quite a bit after Melanie's parents die and she has to move. It does, you know, inevitably shift to a tone which is a lot more kind of melancholic, quite ominous, very mysterious, and a bit more tense. The family, Uncle Philip, her uncle, his family, his younger wife, Margaret or Maggie, she's mute, so she finds it quite difficult to communicate. And her brothers, Finn and Francie, are very strange and make Melanie feel a little uneasy. Finn particularly. And you know, the strength of the writing is that, you know, I felt that too. You know, what Melanie was feeling was very much translated to my feelings towards the other characters as a reader. When they move to London, they are in the city. Melanie's very much much more trapped in the house. She doesn't have any money of her own. She can't go out and entertain herself. And on the one occasion she does manage to go out, she goes out with Finn, and he takes her to this very sort of dilapidated park where the statues have all kind of been left to rot and fallen down or pulled down, and it continues this kind of very kind of dour tone to it, and it makes Melanie feel very uneasy and sad, and you know that translates back, you know, to the reader as well, to me. So it was an interesting book. As I say, certainly not what I expected it to be. Wasn't a massive fan of the plot, although it's not plot focused, it's definitely character focused. But it was just a very strange plot. But it wasn't something that I found, the plot itself I found hugely compelling. But as I say, the reason why I still enjoyed this is because of the writing, the strength of the writing, the prose. Carter has a particular way of certainly when it comes to character, of describing characters, of imbuing them with a real sense of humanity through detail, you know, character traits, quirks, things like that, observations that, you know, you can recognize from you know, people around you, you know, the sort of people that they are. I've got a couple of quotes for you of bits that I just particularly like when it comes to character. So the first one is about Victoria, who's the 5-year-old, and I find one of the most amusing characters in it. Victoria was a lily of the field, neither toiling nor spinning, but not beautiful. Mrs. Rundle sang old songs to her, and Victoria chuckled on her knee and grabbed at Mrs. Rundle's cat with her cube-shaped fist. Mrs. Rundle's cat was an obese, nose-in-the-air Tom. Seated, it was the size and shape of a fur coffee table, a round one. So yeah, I really like the description of the cat there, and just, you know, that the description of Victoria and you know, her kind of behaviour really does just kind of give you, I think, a good idea of that sort of, you know, pudgy 5-year-old who'll just grab at anything and is carefree. Victoria's very carefree. Which is you know, a direct in direct opposition to Melanie, who's kind of got the weight of the world on her shoulders, especially when her parents die and she's the eldest and is left essentially responsible for her younger siblings. And then the second quote is a bit where that they're again, this is before they've moved to London. They are being looked after by a guardian, Mrs. Rundle. Mrs. Rundle's a great character. Never been married, but changed her name legally to Mrs. Rundle because she thought it sounded more respectable. Yeah, this is just where they go to church because Mrs. Rundle is very God-fearing. Melanie prayed, "Please God, let me get married," or "Let me have sex." She'd given up believing in God when she was 13. One morning she woke up and he wasn't there. She went to church to please her father, and she wished on wishbones as well as on her knees. Mrs. Rundle prayed astonishingly. "Please God, let me remember I was married, as if I had really married," for she knew that she could not fool God by virtue of the deed poll. "Or at least," she continued, "let me remember that I had sex," only she phrased it less bluntly. Mrs. Rundle became abstracted from time to time during the service as she wondered how the roast beef and potatoes left at home in the oven were getting on, but she always apologised when she returned in mind to God. Neither Jonathan nor Victoria prayed, having nothing to pray for. Victoria tore the fringes off the hassocks, and ate them. So yeah, just there's so many bits in both this book and the next book I'm going to talk about, which just deal with like character personality details, little thoughts that people have, as I say, little quirks, things like that. That's where Carter's writing really sings for me, is when she was writing about people and about character, and just it was so down to earth and so well observed, and just really kind of even if it's someone or characters where you can't connect with them or relate to them that well personally through experience and stuff like that, they're still really interesting characters. So as I say, this one wasn't what I expected. It was maybe a little bit too melancholic for me at times, and as I say, I wasn't a massive fan of the plot, but it was still a really enjoyable reading experience, and Fiona Shaw did a brilliant job with it as well. Having Angela Carter, for me, I need to hear it. I think I listened to Nights at the Circus, and both of these books are audiobooks, and for me, having somebody read them, especially somebody who really knows what they're doing in performance wise, that's how to experience it for me. And this one was definitely made better by Fiona Shaw's excellent narration. So in terms of a rating for this one then, I'll pop up the rating on screen. For character, I've given it an 8. All very well developed characters. You get inside their heads really well. Certainly Melanie, particularly as the kind of the primary focus. It's told third person, but it's Melanie's perspective. Really well developed characters, and all very interesting and different characters. The atmosphere really evocative, and as I say, eerie, melancholic, ominous. Not always my cup of tea, but I can't deny how well it was done. Writing, I've given it a 9. Carter can't really fail me on that. It was really well written, both in terms of humour, in terms of descriptive quality, choice of words, poetic but not too purple, all that kind of stuff. Plot, I've given a 6 to. As I say, it's just a subjective thing. It just wasn't particularly my cup of tea. The ideas around coming of age, sexual awakening, dealing with responsibility, finding your place in a new family, in a new place, coming to terms with the fact that the life you thought you were going to have is not the one you're going to get now, and having to adapt. Things like that was all done very well, so that's an 8. And in terms of enjoyment, I've given it a 7. It was solid. I enjoyed it. Just it didn't live up to my expectations, certainly. But it wasn't bad by any means. I still enjoyed it, but I didn't kind of really look forward to getting back to it in my next reading session. It wasn't that I wanted to put it off. I was quite happy to read it, but it wasn't kind of one where I was constantly wanting to read all the time. So we add that up and divide by 6, and we get a 7.67 out of 10. So I will round that down to a 7.5 out of 10, and that has gone on Storygraph at a 3.5 stars. Okay, so that's the first one then. So the second one was Wise Children. And this was another audiobook, as I say, and this one was read by Tracy Ullman, who was fantastic. This was written in 1991. This was the last book that Carter wrote before she died. And this is very much a celebration of life, this book. It's life-affirming, absolutely. This one follows Dora. Dora and Nora Chance, who are twins, but this is told by Dora as pretty much as a memoir. It picks up on the eve of I think their 75th birthdays, I want to say, but certainly their father's 100th birthday. They share the same birthday with their father. But they are illegitimate, and they've never been recognised really by their father's family, the Hazards. They have taken the surname Chance after the woman who essentially unofficially adopted them, who they called Grandma. And it is the story of their life, their lives, and their family's kind of situation, and all of the scandals, tragedy, financial difficulties, more bankruptcy, all that kind of stuff. The struggles with fame and fortune as they're, throughout all careers as thespians, essentially. Well, their father is a famous thespian, but they they made their names in music hall. It's a story that covers a huge span of time and goes every which way. It's bonkers, really, in a lot of ways. It's highly theatrical. It's full of the carnivalesque. There are definitely more elements of magic realism in this than in the Magic Toyshop, though still not to the extent that Nights at the Circus had, in terms of like the really kind of easy to pinpoint elements that would make you immediately kind of go, yeah, magic realism. But it's definitely there. But again, the character work in this is absolutely brilliant. Dora, as the protagonist, as the narrator to this, is fantastic. Another character that reminds me of Feathers from Nights at the Circus, in terms of this quite brash, very outspoken, very say it how it is, kind of London lass, essentially. But somebody who can be very kind of crass in some respects and swears a lot and has some quite bitchy things to say, but can then transition straight into really quite eloquent and quite profound monologues, if you like, on philosophy or politics or things like that. Not quite to the same extent as Feathers, but it's definitely there in Dora. And all of the other characters from the family, they are really a cast of characters. They feel like a theatrical troupe, and they are to a large extent. Carter loved Shakespeare, and that is evident in this, and it celebrates Shakespeare. There's a huge amount of Shakespearean references. There are Shakespearean productions as part of the plot. But there's also this musical theatre and music hall that comes in vaudeville, and so you kind of get a kind of a crossover between that and Shakespeare, and it's really interesting in terms of how it looks at theatre and the theatrical life. I think if you're a fan of theatre, then this will be right up your street. As somebody who's worked in theatre and has had a career in theatre before, the stuff that is about kind of actors and backstage and how theatre productions and music hall and all that kind of stuff, the sort of things that go on backstage, if you like, that was really, really interesting, really good. I really enjoyed that. And kind of it looks at the parallels really between sort of theatre and theatrical arts and life. As I say, character work's brilliant. The atmosphere and setting is highly theatrical and larger than life, bright. Let's say bonkers. Really easy to kind of imagine. You inhabit, I think, the settings that Dora talks about, because they're so well described with such richness of language. The plot is all over the shop. There's so much going on because this is covering people's lives, and it is the that they're not normal lives. They are they are very very strange, very adventurous in some respects lives. And the writing is what really, you know, as I say, what ties it all together. And it's some of Carter's best, I think, as well. Again, the way that she talks about and describes characters just makes them so easy to imagine, makes them so real in your mind. Dora herself is such a real character, but then everybody she's talking about and how she talks about them, you know, it makes them the side characters or the supporting characters super real as well. You know, Dora as a character really ties everything together really well. I've got a section to read out, which is quite a long section, but it was one of my favourites. Yeah, this is the description of Grandma Chance, as I say, who's the woman that Dora and Nora ended up kind of being brought up by, the proprietor of the boarding house where they were conceived. She wasn't tall, about 5'2", 5'2.5", but solid built like an armoured car. She always put on so much Rachel powder she puffed out a fine cloud if you patted her. She rouged big round spots in the middle of her cheeks. She used so much eye black the kiddies on Electric Avenue used to give her a chorus of 2 lovely black eyes as she passed by. For all the 30 years we knew her, thanks to peroxide, she was canary-coloured blonde. She always penciled a big black beauty spot below the left-hand corner of her mouth. For outdoors, she wore black, and she never went out without one of those square oilcloth carrier bags in which she kept her fat leather purse, a clean handkerchief in an envelope she'd marked in pencil, clean handkerchief, and a couple of safety pins in case, as she said, her drawers fell down, and often an empty or two on its way back to the off-licence. Indoors, providing the boarders weren't around, she never wore a stitch as often as not. She was a convert to naturism. To this day, I swear, sometimes late at night, I hear a soft thump-thump, her bare feet on the stairs, coming down to make sure the gas is off in the kitchen, the front door is locked and us girls are safe home. And there's a smell of crushed mint that lingers in the breakfast room sometimes, because her favourite tipple was creme de menthe frappé with a sprig of mint in season. But she'd drink whatever she could lay her hands on the rest of the time. And that boiled cabbage of hers, there's an aroma in the area we can't get rid of, no matter what we try. First we thought it was the drains. We never touch cabbage ourselves, not now we're grown up. I couldn't look at cabbage in the eye after what Grandma did to them. Boiled them to perdition. The abattoir is kinder to a cow. The amount of detail that Carter puts into character description and personality and all that kind of stuff. As I say, you get some of the most fully formed 3D sort of characters that I've come across, and certainly like in terms of the theatricality of them, they are larger than life, but they're still believable. They're not stereotypes. They're not, you know, yeah, they're not overdone. It's just all of these little details and the quirkiness of them just makes them so interesting. And all of the characters in this are like that. There isn't a normal one amongst them, and it's fabulous. But the way it's written as well, in terms of the narrative, you know, this is Dora's story, and she's speaking to the reader very conversationally and telling this story like you'd met her in a pub and sat down, and you know, you'd said, "Tell me your life story," and off she goes. And she does go off on tangents. You know, she roams off in different directions at times. There's even a line that says, "There I go again. Can't keep a story on a straight line, can I? Drunk in charge of a narrative." And that I particularly like that, because that's me, as you might know at this point. So yeah, again, the writing in this is superb. It's so funny throughout, but it's also so moving. It's compelling. You know, you want to know what happens next to each of the characters. There's this huge web of different family members that make up these two families, the Chances and the Hazards. And you get, as I say, you get their histories, but also you are waiting to find out what's going to happen at this 100th birthday party as well. And all of the stuff that Dora's telling you about her past leads into that. So it connects so well. The pacing of it is, for me, perfect. There isn't a dull moment in it. There are ups and downs, but they are really well done. They're well paced. Yeah, absolutely fantastic book. And the ideas in it, as I said, there's so many of them. You've got loads of Shakespearean references. You've got loads of stuff about theatre, and as I say, art imitating life, imitating art. There's lots of stuff about kind of belonging and illegitimacy and wanting to be loved, wanting to feel like you belong, wanting to be seen, to be recognised. Again, because it's a lifelong story, you get all of the ups and downs throughout life, love, death, sex. It's very brash, it's very out there. It doesn't pull any punches. Dora speaks her mind, absolutely. It's snarky, it's dry, it's wonderful. It's a really, really fantastic book. If you like theatre, if you like carnival type stuff, if you like music hall, if you like good humour, it's definitely worth a read. So rating for this then, I will pop up on screen. Yep, character work is a 9, fantastic characters, great variety of characters, all of which are really interesting. Atmosphere, another 9. It really speaks to theatre and really made me feel that kind of affinity with the theatrical environment that I used to feel when I was there. It kind of took me back to my own days in sort of theatre and touring theatre and stuff like that as well, even though this is set earlier on. It has that air about it. Writing is a 10. I think this is phenomenal writing. Yep, Summer Carter's best. Up there for me with Nights at the Circus. Plot wise, again, full of different interesting stories, plot lines, throughout Dora and Nora's lives, and always really interesting, always a bit bonkers. Ideas is an 8, plenty of in there, speaking to all of life's challenges and joys. And enjoyment is a 9. Yep, had a great time with this one, got a hell of a lot out of this, and I will absolutely be listening to this one again, and recommending it to a lot of folks that I know with a kind of an interest in or a background in theatre. So we add those scores up and divide by 6, and we get a 9 out of 10. So that is that will go on Storygraph as a 5-star. Yeah, loved this one. This one absolutely lived up to my expectations. Didn't disappoint at all. So there we go. That was my month with Angela Carter. I will absolutely keep going, making my way through Angela Carter's back catalogue. There are plenty more for me to get to. There are some more short stories, I think, out there. So I'll definitely try those. But yeah, I'm going to just crack on and just get them all on audiobook, I think, and work my way gradually through all of Angela Carter's stuff, because it is, even, as I say, even with the Magic Toyshop, where it wasn't quite my cup of tea, it was still very enjoyable just for the writing. The writing is inspiring. The writing is really inspiring. So that will do from me today. I will be spending my month in April with Grady Hendrix, who is an outlier in my list of authors that I want to read more of, in that the only thing that I've read of him so far I didn't like. So I'm giving him another chance. So for April, I will be reading How to Sell a Haunted House and My Best Friend's Exorcism. So we'll see how I get on with those, and see if actually it was an anomaly that I didn't like the one book that I read of his, which was Horror Store, or whether actually he's just not my cup of tea. But he deserves a second chance. But thank you very much for watching today, folks. As always, do drop your thoughts in the comments below. Have you read these Angela Carters? If so, what did you think? Have you read any different Angela Carters? Do recommend any others that I might like that I haven't read yet. Will you be picking any of these up based on my ramblings today? Do let me know. I will be back on Sunday with my wrap up for March in general, all the stuff I got through in March. So I do hope you'll join me then. But from me, for now, that's ta-ra.